Okay, guys, I'm sorry I've been away, but it has been so busy with work, and also I've been working on a doctoral research project, so that took all my attention. But nonetheless, I'm finally having time to record this. A couple people reached out and they wanted me to talk a bit more about my earlier video when I discussed installing Louis Tomlinson as a protective, nurturing figure, like the qualities that his archetype represents or symbolizes in an EMDR session. Once again, this is not a recommendation, this is not a suggestion, this is not a prescriptive, this is just purely my own personal experience of it. I'm not even recommending it at all. I'm not recommending EMDR. So, this information is purely just sharing a personal experience. Do with it whatever you will. But I'm not you. You bear all responsibility for your choice. Okay. So more about the internalized object. So if you look up any of the Roger, who is one of the a really prominent figure in developmental psychology, he talks about how when you look at kids when they're between the ages of say from like newborn to about 3, and the mom or the primary caregiver will leave the room, the child becomes extremely distressed and they kind of scream, and then you have cases of kids who can't go to school because they cannot be separated from their mother or whoever the secure object is. But and that's separation anxiety. But generally, if you take out separation anxiety and you look at how developmentally, eventually people are able to go to school. They're able to spend time away from their parent and not be in distress. Doesn't mean they don't miss their parent. It just means that they're able to do it. They're able to kind of be away and not become so decompensated by the anxiety and distress that they're not able to function. So people can do this as they get older. Now, one of the reasons why is because we internalize our maternal figure or our primary caregiver. When you think of people that go to therapy because of issues in a relationship with their parent, and say the parent, even if the parent's still alive, and they're both now adults, so it's an adult child to a parent relationship, what they're having an issue with is the parent that is internalized. It's not necessarily the parent of the here and now, because your parent gets older, we change with our experiences. They're not the same person that they were when they were a child. Some core personality aspects are still there, but they're not the same parent that person has the issue with. Like they'll have issues with a lot of things maybe that the mother did when they were kids, when they were like adolescents, early adulthood, but mainly the formative years. That mother that they are having the issue with is the mother of that period that they've internalized. So that's when I say internalized object, that's what I'm referring to is the interpersonal dynamic from a specific time period. So if there's anyone listening to this that's actually a psychotherapist or a psychologist that's licensed, and I am wrong, or you're a professor who teaches at a graduate level, tell me I'm wrong in the comments if I'm wrong, because I don't want to be misleading anybody. So if somebody does not have a secure attachment figure, or they did not have a primary caregiver or mother figure that was emotionally safe. Say they were inconsistent, say they had features of borderline personality, narcissistic traits, or they were, say, struggling with addiction, or they were just emotionally immature, or they were basically a toxic mother, then that person would have internalized the mother, that experience that they have had of the mother. And the way we internalize our mother is what we project onto the world in terms of relationships. How we've internalized our father tends to be what we project onto authority figures, whether they're persons or institutions. It's really interesting. It has nothing to do with gender, it has to do with dynamic. So, going back to the EMDR session, when I talk about internalizing a nurturing and safe figure, it's not that I didn't have that. It's just that if somebody wanted to have a resource that was maybe, in their eyes, someone that was more psychologically flexible, more understanding, more caring, we have so much footage of him being such a very protective older brother. And if somebody didn't have enough of those kind of figures, that was a peer, for example, or maybe their own primary caregivers or parents were not safe people, then the qualities that, and we're really lucky because there's so much footage of One Direction, so much footage of Louis that we have since he became famous, that there's so many qualities you could weave in. It's there's other techniques called visioning, but that's not a psychotherapy technique. But in EMDR, they say pick that figure, and it doesn't have to be anybody you know. It can be someone famous. It could even be a character from, say, like a comic book series. It just, I mean, people pick Mr. Rogers, like I said. So when I say that I picked Louis, it's basically because, again, for me, because another person may not see this in him, but for me, it's because there's just this track record of having maintained childhood friends all these years. Like most people, when they're famous, they lose their friends. Not him. Ollie's been in his life since he was like, what, 12? And his best friend Stan has been Louis' best friend since, I think, probably around the same age, like really young. So there's always a stability of somebody that has maintained friends, even despite radical changes in his lifestyle. So that, to me, me personally, that represents some stability. It represents loyalty. It represents like a core person. And there's something nice about having people who've known you from back in the day, is that I think they kind of help keep you grounded if they're good, solid, quality, healthy friendships. Another thing too with the protective figure is, I mean, very protective of his son. I'm not going to argue with anybody, but Freddie is his son, and I don't really care what your theories are. That's his kid, okay? Um, but there's the image I have of him picking up his little sisters, the twins, when they were little, like really little, picking them up from school because mom was working. That was an image that was really strong as an imagery of a protective figure. Because I remember that scene in the footage where he's like clapping his hands, and he sees his twin sisters, and he's, hi, I'm over here, and it's it's there's something genuine about that image for me. That image is both nurturing and protective. So that's where I say, like, Louis kind of got two things going on. Um, and so when you're in an EMDR session, when you install, they call it installing that nurturing protective figure into a memory, where that quality of that figure, not necessarily the person, but the quality they represent to you personally, gets installed. So that is where, like, this notion of the internalized object. So again, if you can internalize the quality of that archetype that it represents, then it's considered what they call a resource. Now, if you're really interested, you go to the EMDRIA, which is the EMDR International Association, emdria.org. Go to that website, and in the blog, on like public posts where they talk about resourcing, look up resourcing, because it's about internal resilience. And because I've done so much research on Louis, he is so resilient, and I can't help but think that he has to have the resilience kind of quality that was cultivated and polished over the years. And so that, again, that's another quality to kind of immerse oneself in, right? So that's the internal object, is our notion of that person. And they always say it's kind of better to use somebody that you don't know, because it's not tampered with your own personal relationships with them, your own experiences of interacting with them, because no close relationship is not free from moments of like bickering, right? So you want to pick someone that you've got a kind of the luxury of not having a tampered image of. So not a perfect, not an idealization, but again, it's the quality. I want to be really clear. It's the quality of that person. So in another way that Louis has been helpful is, if, I had, like, once upon a time, this like a complete asshole boyfriend who I I kind of reconnected with a year ago, just because goddamn Facebook. Anyway, I kind of saw it as like, oh, well, this is a friend. I mean, it's been 10 years. I don't really care. And he went right back to his pattern of like wanting to be Mr. Control Freak. And it was like, dude, like, I'm not trying to date you. And then, anyway, he was like the opposite of the qualities of Louis that I discussed. Was with I'm not dating this guy, but he was like, got mad when I got ombre brows because I'm being too vain. Got mad that I got Botox. I'm like, fuck off, dude. Like, you're not paying for this shit, okay? Anywho, so I basically blocked him, and he attempts to get hold of me every once in a while. I just keep blocking him. But if you've had the experience of boyfriends that are like this, then it's really important if you're doing any kind of relational trauma work, in my personal opinion, in say EMDR, that it's important to imbue and install a nurturing protective figure that's someone like a Louis, who would be totally, in my opinion, in my perception of his archetype, would not be a control freak asshole. Would be like, I mean, because he grew up with so many women, like he kind of understands this stuff, in my opinion, right? Um, and was very close to his mom. So that would be the quality to imbue, because it's like as within, so without, right? Like if my internal object is this really protective, kind boyfriend who's really understanding, really totally gets it, then that's the quality to install, so that that's kind of who you orient to look for when you're scanning the room or you're scanning life. That person who's got those qualities will pop out. Because if you ever wonder why some people attract assholes, it's because that's what's imbued in them.